The day I was announced for promotion, I ended my own life in the company restroom. 2 months earlier, I overheard my roommate binding with a career exchange system through the door. At first, I didn't pay it any mind, thinking she was just talking in her sleep. But when my projects kept getting snatched away at the last minute and handed to her, when she became the rising star while my performance sank to the bottom month after month, that's when panic set in. I confronted her, and my roommate dropped all pretense. Not only did she admit the system existed, she outright declared she wanted to drive me to my death. Thinking that if I couldn't handle it, I could at least avoid it, I went to interview at new companies. But every time I successfully passed the interview, I would be fired the very next day. Meanwhile, those big tech companies kept extending olive branches to my roommate. The last time, I fled back to my hometown and, through connections, found a cushy job at a small company. On the day I was announced for a promotion, my roommate showed up again. The boss's gaze toward me instantly turned complicated, and he waved me into his office for a detailed discussion, which turned out to be firing me. I couldn't take it anymore and died with a heart full of resentment. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my roommate bound the career transfer system. Xiao, did you see the notice from the boss? So annoying. Why does it have to be so urgent? Zhou Wei's sticky, saccharine voice wormed its way into my ears as she spoke in that affected tone. I bolted upright from the bed to find her seated at my vanity, touching up her makeup. Startled by my sudden movement, she patted her chest. What's gotten into you? Jumping like that over nothing. It's just a document. With your efficiency, you'll definitely get it done. Why the rush? The memory of toilet cleaner burning through my insides, that agony like 100 claws scraping at my organs, felt viscerally real. I was absolutely certain I'd died. I immediately grabbed my phone to check the date. That's when I realized I'd been reborn. Seeing me remain silent for so long, Zhou Wei widened her eyes in playful reproach. What's with that expression? You scared me. I don't want to talk to you anymore. With that, she stormed back to her room, clutching the few high-end cosmetics she'd carefully selected from my desk. Everything felt eerily familiar. My heart leapt into my throat, and it took me a moment to recover before I hurried out. Zhou Wei was in her room, speaking in hushed tones to someone. I pressed my ear against the door. If the system really exists, I want to bind with the career exchange system and transfer all of Lin Wan's career luck to me. Why should I believe you? Fine then, give me the documents Lin Wan wrote tonight. In my past life, when I heard these words, I thought Zhou Wei was talking in her sleep and didn't take it seriously at all. I'm a staunch materialist and don't believe in the existence of systems like this at all, especially when it comes to careers that rely entirely on genuine talent and knowledge. Even if the results could be stolen, it wouldn't give her the actual ability. Besides, with today's advanced technology, everything leaves traces. Even if she did steal my files, I could still provide evidence of the process to prove myself. So, I didn't pay much attention to what I heard. Unexpectedly, at the next morning's meeting, the boss singled me out for criticism, saying I hadn't sent him the project files on time, and for the first time ever, he praised Zhou Wei. Without listening to my explanation, he directly handed over a major project I was responsible for to Zhou Wei. As her roommate, I know Zhou Wei's work habits all too well. How could she change overnight? What's more, I clearly remember sending the file to my boss late last night, and he even replied to confirm receipt. I frantically opened my phone, only to find that my chat history with my boss stopped 4 days ago. The file on my computer had also vanished without a trace, not a single clue left. After this incident, I learned my lesson. From then on, I made sure to submit important projects to my supervisor in person and never worked on anything critical at home, denying Zhou Wei any chance to access my computer. But even with all these precautions, every project I was responsible for would somehow end up being handed over to Zhou Wei at the very last moment. I grew suspicious and went to Zhou Wei to probe for information, only to have her arrogantly declare, "That's right, I'm bound to a system. I don't just want your career, I want you dead." Realizing direct confrontation wasn't the best option, I simply resigned and started interviewing everywhere. But every time I passed an interview, the HR would be discussing onboarding procedures with me in the morning, only to call in the afternoon telling me to look elsewhere, while Zhouwei's social media would promptly feature another offer screenshot. Left with no choice, I left the city and returned to my hometown, relying on my parents' connections to secure a job. Just when I thought things would finally go smoothly, Zhouwei showed up again on the very day my promotion was announced. Before Zhouwei could even speak a word in front of everyone, the boss's gaze toward me had already turned to Yui Shincheng. He called me into his office, and once again I was fired. This time, my psychological defenses completely collapsed. As I fled in panic, I caught sight of the toilet cleaner in the bathroom. Squatting in the stall, I drank it all in one gulp. Perhaps even heaven couldn't bear to watch, giving me another chance. This time, I won't die an unjust death again. Chapter 2, Xiaowan. What are you doing here? Zhouwei pushed open the door and ran into me standing at the entrance, her smile instantly turning stiff. Suppressing the fury in my heart, I replied, "Nothing, I just came out for some water." Zhouwei let out a relieved sigh, then moved closer to massage my shoulders. "Xiaowan, the boss needs that document so urgently. If you wanted water, you could have just called me." I mumbled an agreement, returned to my room, quickly packed my belongings, and booked a hotel to move into. On the way to the hotel, I submitted my resignation through the company app and blocked all of Zhouwei's contact information for good measure. This time, I would sever all ties with Zhouwei first, ensuring neither she nor her system could reach me in any way. Sitting in the hotel room, I received a message from my boss, who made a half-hearted attempt to persuade me to stay. Seeing my resolve, they relented, though the formal resignation process would have to wait until tomorrow's workday. I replied with an "okay," turned on my computer, and a plan formed in my mind. In my past life, Zhouwei swapped my files, not only receiving praise but also taking away a major deal. I was just one contract away from closing. Since she loves stealing others' achievements, I'll prepare a little surprise for her. I typed up a document as quickly as possible and sent it to the boss. Just like in my past life, the boss replied with a "received." The next morning, when I opened my computer again, both the document and my chat history with the boss had completely disappeared. I knew Zhouwei had taken the bait. I packed my things and headed to the office, where I happened to run into Zhouwei at the entrance. "Xiaowan, why didn't you come home last night? And why did you block me? Who did you spend the night with? I was so worried." Zhouwei's voice was so loud that everyone around immediately turned to look at me. "What do you mean again? Where I go is none of your business." Zhouwei's tone turned pitiful, her eyes instantly reddening. "I was just worried about you, Xiaowan. How could you be like this?" I knew arguing with her further was pointless, so I lowered my head and quickened my pace. "Found a boyfriend yet? Well, at your age, you can't afford to fool around like before." Even when we reached the meeting room, Zhouwei kept chattering away, every word dripping with insinuation. Just as I was about to snap back in frustration, the boss walked into the room. "Today's morning meeting is mainly for everyone to present the proposals you worked on last night." Colleagues took turns going up one by one until it was finally Zhouwei's turn. Zhouwei confidently stepped onto the stage with her USB drive, opened the PPT, and the cover page boldly displayed the title, "Sexual Health Supplements for the Elderly." Zhouwei's smile froze instantly. The room fell into dead silence. Just as I was secretly smirking, the boss suddenly started clapping enthusiastically. "Excellent. Zhouwei's perspective is quite innovative. Since our theme is smart elderly care, we should consider every aspect of seniors' lives." Though slightly puzzled, everyone followed suit and began applauding. Zhouwei shot me a triumphant glance before stepping down from the stage amidst the applause after presenting her PowerPoint. At the end of the morning meeting, the boss harshly criticized me for failing to complete the task on time, but by then I was already too distracted to care. "Is this also the system's doing?" Did she take away my luck rather than just the results? How could I possibly escape this? Lin Wan, weren't you planning to resign? Come on then, the boss sneered, his words snapping me back to reality. Xiao Wan, why didn't you tell me in advance? Weren't you doing just fine? Why resign? Zhou Wei tightly gripped my wrist, on the verge of tears. I only felt icy cold all over and fled the conference room as if escaping. Chapter 3. I hadn't been working long and most of my monthly salary was sent back home. Without a job, the meager savings I'd managed to put aside wouldn't support me staying in a hotel for long. Out of necessity, I had no choice but to start looking for a new job. When selecting companies, I deliberately avoided the big firms I'd interviewed with in my previous life, choosing instead a very inconspicuous small studio. The interview went smoothly, the communication was fluid, and the HR representative kept nodding frequently. I felt certain I had it in the bag. But as I stepped out of the studio's door, I saw Zhou Wei leaning against the wall by the entrance. When she noticed me, a sweet smile spread across her face. I instinctively took a step back. What are you doing here? What? Are you the only one allowed to switch jobs? Can I explore new possibilities too? My entire body turned cold, and I couldn't utter a word. Zhou Wei patted my shoulder with a cheerful smile, then walked through the studio's door. I stumbled downstairs in a daze. Almost the moment I stepped out of the elevator, my phone buzzed with a text from the studio, telling me to look elsewhere. How on earth did she know? I definitely didn't tell anyone about my job interview. Did she hack into my phone system? I downloaded over a dozen antivirus apps in a row, but the scans showed nothing unusual with my phone. After careful consideration, I paid to contact a job agency to help me find work. Just as I hung up the call, a text message popped up. Even resorting to an agency? Are you that desperate for money? Without even thinking, I knew it was Zhou Wei on the other end. My mind went completely blank. How the hell did you find out? The reply came quickly. You just need to know that someone like you doesn't deserve good opportunities. Anger clouded my mind, and I immediately called the number that sent the message, practically shouting into the phone. Is that system you mentioned in the room that day behind all this? Zhou Wei burst into laughter on the other end of the line. So, you know about it? Well then, I won't pretend anymore. Yes, I've bound myself to a luck swapping system. No matter where you run, I can take every opportunity meant for you. You think staying out of the action will let you escape the system's surveillance? You're being naive. My voice trembled as I asked, why? Zhou Wei, I've never done you wrong. Zhou Wei and I had been close friends since school. After graduation, when she had a falling out with her family and had nowhere to stay, it was me who offered to share an apartment with her. I even helped her get into the same company where I worked. I never imagined that someone I treated with sincerity would do this to me. Zhou Wei's voice sounded like she was grinding her teeth. Why? I just want to drive you to despair. Do I need any other reason? Before I could respond, Zhou Wei hung up the phone. The agency moved quickly, calling me that very evening to say a decent company had reviewed my resume and wanted me to come in for an interview. I agreed immediately, gathered my materials, and took a taxi to the interview location. Unsurprisingly, I saw Zhou Wei waiting at the entrance. She still wore that same domineering expression. I made myself perfectly clear, you can't escape. As long as I'm here, you'll never pass this interview. Why won't you believe me? I walked into the interview room without a word, and the communication still went smoothly. Zhou Wei was next in line after me, and soon, she emerged with a triumphant look on her face. The HR followed behind her, glancing at me with a complicated expression. After careful consideration, we've decided to hire MS. Zhou Wei. Zhou Wei mouthed a boast at me, while the HR handed something to her. Zhou Wei instinctively took it, but when she looked down and saw what was in her hand, her face instantly turned pale. Chapter 4. Zhou Wei's hands trembled slightly as she looked up at the HR in disbelief. What is this? The HR person looked somewhat surprised, then quickly regained composure. Miss Zhou, didn't you carefully review the contract when you signed it earlier? These are the job details. Zhou Wei suddenly let out a piercing scream, flung the job details violently at me, and immediately lunged forward to grab my hair. Did you do this on purpose? You tricked me into going to that kind of place so you could get me killed, didn't you? While dodging her attack, I retorted sharply. This offer was earned through your own capabilities. How could it possibly be my doing? I should be congratulating you. These words completely enraged Zhou Wei. She forcefully pinned me to the ground, slapped me hard across the face, and was about to strike again when the HR staff nearby pulled her away. The HR staff looked extremely awkward. Miss Zhou Wei, this is a workplace. Can't we sit down and discuss things properly? Zhou Wei, however, thrashed around like a madwoman, screaming at HR. I'm not going to that damn place. Is that even a place for humans? Why don't those filthy things just die off? A crowd began to gather around them, and the HR staff's expression darkened. Miss Zhou Wei, although our work here is temporary, it's still a public service position organized by the state. This isn't a joke. You've already signed the contract. Breaking it now will go on your permanent record and follow you for life. Zhou Wei screamed back. Record it wherever you want. I only have this one life. I'd rather die than go serve those filthy, disease-ridden devils. Watching Zhou Wei's frenzied state, I felt a thrilling sense of vengeance coursing through me. When I first contacted the agency, my job requirements had been simple. I didn't mind hardship or exhaustion, mainly wanting to gain some life experience. The agency delivered spectacularly. The job they found me. An AIDS village deep in the mountains, providing villagers with health education and daily living assistance. The assignment lasted 1 month. While routine daily contact couldn't transmit HIV, it still took tremendous courage for an ordinary person to live among an entire village of patients for an extended period. Zhou Wei and I were the last candidates for the interview, but only one of us would be selected. Zhou Wei just wanted to make things difficult for me, but she didn't expect to drag herself down as well. The crowd around us started murmuring, how can she be so discriminatory? HIV isn't transmitted just that way. She's spreading baseless rumors about an entire village. What's her problem? If she's so scared, why pretend to be kind-hearted here? She has no sense of commitment, probably just here for attention. Who knows? She might even be wearing a hidden camera. Zhou Wei didn't seem the least bit embarrassed by the crowd's comments. Instead, she fired back. What's with the hypocrisy? If you love moral grandstanding so much, why don't you go yourselves instead of pushing me? The HR manager's face had turned absolutely grim. Do I need to remind you, Miss Zhou Wei? You came to this interview of your own accord. Zhou Wei was about to say something more when the sound of police sirens cut her off completely. Within moments, 2 officers arrived at the scene. The HR manager stepped forward to explain the situation to the police. After some discussion, the officers sized up both Zhou Wei and me before escorting us to the police station. Sitting in the mediation room, the officer asked sternly why we'd started the altercation. Through tears and sobs, I gave my account with complete sincerity. I don't know, officer. She suddenly went crazy as soon as she came out. I just congratulated her on getting the job, and she hit me. Look, my face is still swollen. Zhou Wei was so furious, she slammed the table and called me shameless. If it weren't for you, would I have ended up there? I hit you because you're a despicable bitch. Pretending to be scared, I hid behind the police officer and asked her in a trembling voice, I haven't contacted you since I left the company. How did you know where I would be? What did you want from me? Hearing my question, the police officer also frowned and looked at Zhou Wei, waiting for her response. Zhou Wei immediately fell silent. Could she tell the officer she was bound to a career exchange system? Of course not. She hemmed and hawed for a long time, but couldn't come up with a proper answer. Seeing her like this, the officer understood the situation somewhat, and I seized the moment. Officer, MS. Zhou and I used to be colleagues. After I resigned, I cut off all contact with her, but somehow she always knows where I go for job interviews. I have every reason to suspect she's been stalking me. The officer's expression turned serious. Is what she's saying true? Zhou Wei stiffened her neck and retorted defiantly, Officer, don't listen to her nonsense. She's allowed to quit her job, but others can't keep their options open. This place isn't that big. It's perfectly normal to coincidentally interview for the same position. Zhou Wei had a point, so the officer asked me for evidence. I knew the proof I had at the moment was still too flimsy. I needed something more concrete. When I remained silent for a while, Zhou Wei grew smug. See, officer? She can't produce any evidence. She's just slandering me with baseless accusations. When dealing with shameless people, you have to be even more brazen than they are. Clutching my head, I played the rogue. Ouch, officer, I'm so dizzy. She must have hit me. If this turns into a chronic condition, how am I supposed to live? Zhou Wei was so furious, she nearly flipped the table. Stop pretending. I barely touched you. Ignoring her curses, I kept up my act. I need a full medical checkup, and she's paying for it. Oh no, I think I'm hemorrhaging. Why is everything going dark? With solid evidence of Zhou Wei hitting me and my convincing performance, the police still made her take me to the hospital for a thorough examination. Afraid Zhou Wei might weasel out of it, I dragged the officer along for the whole process. I deliberately picked the most expensive tests and squeezed 3,000 yuan out of her for the checkup. The results naturally showed I was perfectly healthy. After signing the mediation agreement and leaving the police station, I felt completely weightless. Zhou Wei had suffered a major loss, her face so dark it could drip ink. Stamping her foot, she gnashed her teeth at me. Just you wait, Lin Wan. What you've taken from me, I'll make you repay 1,000, no, 10,000 times over. I let out a cold laugh. If we counted my past life, what Zhou Wei owed me was far more than just this trifle. Still, curiosity got the better of me, and I called out to Zhou Wei as she turned to leave. Why exactly did you treat me this way? Zhou Wei, was I really so terrible to you? Zhou Wei clenched her fists tightly and gave a mocking smile. How could you think that? Shawan, everyone knows how good you were to me, don't they? Then why? Zhou Wei suddenly turned around, her eyes fierce. But I hate it when you're nice to me. I've hated it since college. Why do you always put on that goody-two-shoes act every day?
Why?
Why is it that we went to the same school, yet you had to outshine me at every turn? And in the end, you still pretend to be all magnanimous, turning around to throw me some scraps while expecting me to lick your boots like a dog?
Why?
Lin Wan, if it weren't for you, I would have been the one who went to CH headquarters that fall recruitment. If I'd stayed there, I could have gotten far away. My father would never have had the chance to find me again. This is all your fault. I'll never let you off, not even when I die. With that, Zhou Wei flung her hand and turned to leave. CH was a company specializing in international trade, and that year's fall recruitment had only one intern position available. Zhou Wei's father was solely focused on exchanging his college-educated daughter for a hefty bride price, which made her value the opportunity to participate in the CH internship abroad more than anything else. Upon learning this, I immediately withdrew from the interview. The second-place candidate moved up, while Zhou Wei, ranked third, ultimately missed out on the opportunity. I never expected that my action would be seen by her as charity and provocation, making her harbor resentment toward me because of it. For a moment, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. Chapter 6 I knew that given Zhou Wei's level of obsession, my danger wasn't entirely over. Ultimately, I still needed to quickly find a way to crack that so-called system. At that moment, I remembered my childhood friend Jiang Feng, who ran a company back in our hometown and immediately bought a ticket for the next train home. Jiang Feng greeted me with a joke. Well, if it isn't Lin Wan, what's the matter? Did your wandering fail, and now you've decided to come running to me? I gave a bitter smile. There's actually a bit of a situation, Feng. What I'm about to tell you might sound a little crazy, but believe me, I'm not insane. Seeing how serious I looked, Jiang Feng dropped his playful expression. As I laid out everything that had happened during this period, his frown deepened with every word. Is it really that absurd? Have you been reading too many novels? I had anticipated his reaction, so I wasn't too disappointed. I just asked him to organize an interview. He'd find out soon enough. Zhang Feng was half convinced, but still agreed. But if this so-called system really exists, there must be some screening criteria, right? How could the exchange happen without even knowing the job details? Isn't that way too risky? Zhang Feng made a good point. I nodded and said, "You're right." I also wondered if she had installed something on my phone, but I checked with multiple apps and found nothing. Zhang Feng lowered his head in thought, then suddenly slapped his forehead. Doesn't that mean she might be tracking you through normal channels? How did you communicate with those companies and agencies? I paused, then suddenly realized. WeChat and phone calls. You mean she's been monitoring my communications with the outside world in real time through some means? Zhang Feng nodded and continued. If it were WeChat, your security software would definitely detect something amiss. So it must be the phone calls. I felt a sudden clarity. During this period, my attention had been entirely focused on that so-called system, making me so anxious that I overlooked many more plausible possibilities in daily life. With a clear direction in mind, I first took a taxi to the mobile service center. My SIM card was originally handled by Zhou Wei when I first joined my previous company. At the time, she said she had connections at the service center and could get me a more cost-effective plan. Coincidentally, I had urgent work the next day, so I entrusted this matter to Zhou Wei. The sales clerk checked and discovered that the card I had been using was actually a secondary card, while there was also a primary card still in use. I looked. It was Zhou Wei's number. With a trembling voice, I asked the clerk whether the primary card could simultaneously receive calls from the secondary card. The clerk frowned.
Normally, no. But yours is a parent-child plan.
We designed this specifically so parents could monitor their children in real time. So the primary card can receive the secondary card's messages, calls, and even billing records. Hearing this, I felt a chill run through me. I had been using this phone number for a year, and for that entire year, every connection I had with the outside world had been under Zhou Wei's surveillance. No wonder Zhou Wei always seemed to foresee everything, knowing all my movements and plans. To avoid alerting her, I didn't choose to cancel the account. Instead, I thanked the clerk and walked out of the hall. As soon as I stepped outside, I called Zhang Feng on my phone. Boss Zhang, I'm thinking of returning to my hometown to develop. Would you do me the honor? Zhang Feng caught on quickly. Though confused, he played along. Of course, come to the company tomorrow at 10 a.m. Hanging up, I smirked at my phone. The bait was set, now to wait for the fish to bite. Early in the morning, I drove to the building of Zhang Feng's company, but stayed in the car. Just after 9 o'clock, a taxi pulled up at the entrance and Zhou Wei stepped out. She looked around but didn't spot me, so she leaned casually against the entrance, waiting. Suppressing my pounding heart, I took a deep breath and got out of the car. The moment our eyes met, I deliberately feigned panic.
You.
Why are you here again? How did you even find out about my private matters? Zhou Wei smirked at my nervousness. I told you, no matter where you hide, you can't escape the system's surveillance. With that, she turned haughtily and strode into the company lobby ahead of me. As before, I entered the interview room first, where Zhang Feng and an HR representative were waiting to conduct the interview. The interview process proceeded normally, and soon my session ended. When it was Zhou Wei's turn to go in, she shook her head and whispered as she passed by me. Lin Wan, unless you're dead, you'll never outdo me. I turned around, ready to retort, but only saw the door she had slammed shut. I waited anxiously in the hallway, my heart filled with unease. What if Zhang Feng comes out with a changed expression too? Would that mean the system truly exists? Would I never be free from this anxiety? After a long wait, instead of Zhou Wei emerging, the police arrived. An officer stepped forward and directly opened the interview room door, his expression stern as he showed his badge to Zhou Wei, whose face was streaked with tears. Miss Zhou, you are suspected of spreading rumors, defamation, and illegally obtaining others' private information. Please come with us. When she was taken away, Zhou Wei still wore an expression of disbelief, completely distraught, screaming hoarsely, "It's not like this. It's not like this." On the way to the police station, Zhang Feng explained the situation to me. It turned out that throughout today's interview, Zhang Feng had been live streaming the entire time, and his police friends had been monitoring the content in real time. As soon as Zhou Wei entered, instead of introducing herself like a normal interviewee, she immediately started listing my flaws. While speaking, she took out a black USB drive, plugged it into the computer, opened a folder, and began playing a slideshow. The slides were filled with accusations against me, including but not limited to claims of competition cheating, resume fraud, leaking company secrets, and a chaotic personal life, among others. The presentation was well documented with both images and text, even including videos. Only at the end did she turn the focus to herself, tearfully explaining, "How do I know all this? Because she plagiarized my work. She kept threatening to revoke my scholarship and award eligibility, which is why I never spoke up during college." She then produced what she claimed as evidence and concluded, "I'm revealing this to help your company see that she's untrustworthy. All those achievements in her resume are actually mine. I hope your company will consider me instead." The PowerPoint presentation looked quite convincing. If Zhang Feng and I hadn't attended the same university, even I might have believed it. Before Zhou Wei could even wipe away her tears, the police pushed open the door. Hearing this, I could only laugh bitterly, so in my past life, I'd been driven to my death by such clumsy tactics. After police investigation, it was confirmed that all contents in Zhou Wei's PPT were fabricated. At the same time, I finally learned what had happened to that document before my resignation. Turns out Zhou Wei had developed a secret relationship with our former company's boss. She merely expressed her displeasure with me, and that boss helped her hatch this malicious scheme. When I sent the file to my boss, he immediately forwarded it to Zhou Wei. While I was asleep, Zhou Wei deleted the original file from my computer. It's almost laughable how much effort these two put into harming me, but fortunately, their complete chat records provided the police with ample evidence to act quickly. As a result, Zhou Wei couldn't escape prison time, and I finally avoided a fatal outcome. On the day Zhou Wei was sentenced, I found a new job with good pay and close to home. In every sense, I've welcomed my new life. The end.